Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be discussing conspiracy theories. So, have you ever heard that the world's governments are controlled by a group called the Freemasons? That the Apollo 11 moon landing was faked by NASA? That the US government planted explosives to bring down the World Trade Center? If so, you've been exposed to a conspiracy theory. So, I would define a conspiracy theory as an explanation that attributes a set of events to a small but powerful secretive group. There's often no direct evidence for a conspiracy, but believers claim the events are best explained by one. That is, the events are of such a magnitude that only a group possessing lots of power could accomplish them. For instance, Senator Joe McCarthy thought that America's loss of global power following World War II could only be explained by assuming that communists had conspired to destroy America and infiltrate the U.S. government. In a speech he gave to Congress, he said, "How can we account for our present situation unless we believe that men high in this government are concerting to deliver us to disaster? This must be the product of a great conspiracy on a scale so immense as to dwarf any previous such venture in the history of man. A conspiracy of infamy so black that, when it is finally exposed, its principles shall forever be deserving of the malediction of all honest men." Later, he conducted hearings where he accused people of having communist loyalties, often providing no evidence that they were actually communists. However, no conspiracy was ever uncovered, and instead his McCarthy hearings ruined the careers of many respectable people. This is one similarity between conspiracy theories and pseudoscience, the reverse burden of proof. Right, in the McCarthy hearings, it wasn't, "Here's some evidence that you're a communist, what do you have to say about it?" It was, "I have no evidence that you're a communist, but I assume you are. Prove that you're not." So the burden of proof is placed on the average person to prove that there is no conspiracy. What I'm going to focus on first are the features that make conspiracy theories unlikely. So to be clear, we're not saying that all conspiracy theories are automatically wrong, just like not all claims that sound strange are automatically wrong. Instead, these are characteristics that if a particular claim shows, then that should make us skeptical about that claim's validity. So the argument is that conspiracy theories that don't show these characteristics might have a better chance of being true, but those that rely on these features are probably wrong. So again, what we're going to do is discuss some features of conspiracy theories that make them rather implausible, and we'll use one in particular as an example, the hidden cure conspiracy. And the hidden cure conspiracy says that the medical establishment is withholding a cure for a particular disease. So it goes something like this. A group of researchers have discovered a cure for cancer or AIDS or Alzheimer's, but the medical establishment is suppressing it and won't release it for various reasons. So again, we're going to talk about these features of conspiracy theories and apply them to this specific conspiracy. So one feature that makes conspiracies unlikely is that there is no establishment like a claim suggests. Instead, there are lots of smaller groups, all of which are made up of regular people. So you might hear someone say something like, "UFOs have visited Earth, but the government doesn't want you to know about it," stated with the implication that the government is a single all-powerful entity. The point here is that there's no such thing as the government that makes decisions or wields power. Instead, the government is made up of many branches and organizations, including federal, state, and local ones. And so the government is really just made up of people. Accordingly, there is no medical establishment, and instead there are lots of smaller groups that are just made up of people. So just like there's no the government, there's no the medical establishment that has the power to suppress a cure. Instead, the American Medical Association, medical schools, hospitals, pharmaceutical companies, the NIH, and the National Cancer Center are all smaller groups interested in cancer research. Another feature that makes conspiracies unlikely is that it is unlikely that every group and person involved in the conspiracy could and would maintain the secret indefinitely. So yeah, maybe if the conspiracy theory says that, well, people have been maintaining a secret for a couple years, maybe that's plausible. But conspiracies that suggest that a secret has been maintained for a long period of time, well, those are sort of unlikely. And this ties into the previous point. The claim that the government can and will cover up an alien conspiracy sounds a lot stronger and more convincing than the 100,000 or so people who work for and have worked for Congress, different federal agencies, the military, the CIA, the FBI, the Department of Defense, etc., have covered up an alien conspiracy. That is, should we really believe that not one employee or ex-employee would have let this information slip to the press or to a family member that's not part of the conspiracy? right? When we consider how well the government keeps secrets, remember things like Watergate, Iran-Contra, the Edward Snowden leaks, right? This feature makes conspiracy theories pretty unlikely. Accordingly, the medical cure conspiracy theory assumes monumental callousness on the part of many different people, doctors, researchers, etc., that they would continue to let sick people die. Even if there was the medical establishment that had the power to withhold cures, it's unlikely that every individual person could be that callous to not say something, thereby causing the deaths of so many people who suffer from these diseases. Moreover, those who work within the medical establishment have family members and friends who get sick from the diseases that they're supposedly withholding the cures for, not to mention that they get sick from those diseases themselves. So are they so heartless that they would withhold the treatment from their loved ones, or that they would jeopardize their career or risk malpractice suits that could be filed against them if they found they were suppressing a cure? Probably not, and that makes this conspiracy theory unlikely to be true. The last feature that makes conspiracy theories unlikely is that there's often no good reason to maintain the conspiracy, and it is often in some supposed conspirator's best interest to expose it. Now, depending on the conspiracy, it might make sense for everyone involved to maintain it, but not usually. Let's go back to UFOs as an example. In movies, public panic is often given as a reason why the government keeps information about aliens a secret. But revealing this information would actually probably be in the government's best interest. For instance, they'd be able to raise more taxes to help defend the country from invaders, or to unite the country against a common enemy. And even if some agencies might be better off keeping UFOs a secret, others would surely profit if the public knew that aliens were visiting Earth, like NASA or defense agencies. To apply this to the hidden cure conspiracy, different groups, for example, hospitals, researchers, drug companies, etc., in the so-called medical establishment are actually in competition with each other, and each of them would profit incredibly by announcing a cure for a disease. So the single best way for any individual researcher or medical school or cancer treatment center to gain recognition and money is through productive research, like finding the cancer cure. No scientist has anything to gain by failing to make new discoveries. So instead of people in the medical establishment being in league with each other, like the conspiracy theory claims, it is in each group's best interest to make new cures known, not to hide them. Just think how much money the first drug company that developed a cure for cancer would make. Now, maybe certain medical providers might lose money if a common disease was cured, but there will always be plenty of diseases to be treated and money to be made. Right? Think of all the vaccines that have been released for smallpox, polio, measles, whooping cough, chickenpox, etc., but doctors and drug companies still make plenty of money. The last thing I want to talk about today is why do people believe in conspiracy theories? So we've just seen how implausible conspiracy theories are, but still lots of people believe in them. So here are some explanations for why they do. One reason is that it relates to people's tendencies to perceive patterns even when the events are random. We discussed this when we talked about empirical evidence, that people tend to see patterns even when there are none. For instance, consider the supposed faking of the moon landing. People who claim that the Apollo 11 mission was faked use evidence like this photograph that was taken at the landing site on the moon. They claim that aspects of this photo are inconsistent with an actual photo that would have been taken on the moon and are instead consistent with it being taken on Earth in a studio. The characteristics they point out are that the flag appears to be waving when there is no wind on the moon, that there are no stars in the sky when there apparently should be lots, and there is a flag decal on the lunar module that is easy to see, but should be in a shadow and thus tough to see if there is only one light source, the sun. These points seem to fit a pattern best explained by conspiracy theory that the moon landing was faked and that this photo was taken in a studio on Earth. But while these issues might seem reasonable to non-physics and photography experts, that again the explanation fits the overall pattern nicely, each criticism can be explained. I posted a video from Mythbusters that specifically covers the multiple light source issue, and for the criticism about the lack of stars, here's an explanation from a website. Quote, the moon's surface reflects sunlight, and that glare would have made the comparatively dim stars difficult to see. Also, the astronauts took photographs using fast exposure settings, which would have limited incoming background light. So again, each individual point is easily explained by people who are knowledgeable enough to do so. That is, while the evidence might seem to best fit the pattern of a conspiracy, the events are actually perfectly explained without referring to a conspiracy. The second explanation is confirmation bias, that believers focus on evidence that fits the conspiracy and ignore disconfirming evidence. So yes, probably most conspiracy theories have some amount of circumstantial evidence, or else they wouldn't be believed. But they are contradicted by even more evidence. However, through confirmation bias, believers trick themselves into thinking that the majority of the evidence supports their view when the opposite is true. Because again, they focus on the evidence that supports a conspiracy theory and ignore the even greater amount of disconfirming evidence that would show the conspiracy theory is not true. And then the final reason why people believe conspiracy theories is the misapplication of the representativeness heuristic, which says that big events must have big causes. So the representativeness heuristic is something that we'll talk about in the other PowerPoint this week, but applied to conspiracy theories, it's the reasoning that like causes like, that big events must have big causes. For example, it was a huge deal for America that we became less powerful following World War II. Well, was our loss of power due to lots of minor factors or a big, grand communist conspiracy? The representativeness heuristic says that we're biased to assume that this big event could only have been caused by something equally big, again a communist conspiracy. Same thing with the September 11th attacks. Some of America's most identifiable buildings are destroyed and thousands of its citizens die. Is it due to ordinary terrorists, which unfortunately is a common occurrence nowadays, or due to a big government conspiracy theory? So to test this explanation for why people believe in conspiracy theories, that people naturally assume that big events are due to big causes, researchers gave participants one of 4 versions of a false but plausible news story, an attempted assassination of a foreign president. In the first story, a gunman shot and killed the president of a foreign country. In the second story, a gunman wounded the president of a foreign country, but he survived. In the third, the gunman wounded the president, but he later died of an unrelated cause. And in the fourth, the gunman shot at but missed the president. When students were asked how likely it was that the assassination attempt was the result of a conspiracy, the students who read the first account, in which the gunman shot and killed the foreign president, found it to be much more likely than those who read the other 3 accounts. Why? Well, again, it's because of our tendency to associate big effects, like the killing of a foreign president, with big causes, a conspiracy theory. All right, that's all I have for us today.